Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to our forum. Uh, we do this every election, and our hope and goal is to get as many people, voters and citizens as possible out to hear the candidates directly. And as you probably found out, you have the opportunity for 30 minutes here to be able to talk one-on-one with the candidates. And part of what will be going on here tonight is you will also have the opportunity to ask questions and find out where the candidates stand on different issues that you may have on your mind. I'd like to introduce a little bit of the ground rules for this and how the evening will go. First of all, the candidates will each give an opening statement, 3 minutes per candidate, and John is going to toss a coin as to who starts. By the way, all through this, if you take a look on the back wall, you will see a projection of color there, and there's going to be what do you got? Stop. Okay. So when we say we're going to have timing here, that's where the timing is going to take place. And so that, everybody gets equal time. Okay? The next thing is that after the opening statements comes the most important part of the evening, which is the citizen participation. And John and I will invite members of the audience to ask questions of the candidates. And we will allow as many questions as time permits. Just a couple of ground rules. Please be considerate when stating a question. We reserve the right to dismiss insensitive and inappropriate questions. And please limit your questions to 30 seconds, and we'll be timing you. Candidates, please try to respond within 1 minute. So that the whole idea is to get as many questions and many people that are sitting here as possible to ask what is of interest to them. And John and I, reserve the right to extend the answer time if it seems the candidate needs a little bit more time to finish. Questions can be directed to either candidate. If a question is directed to one particular candidate, one of us will offer the opponent the opportunity to respond. So that's the ground rules, and then there'll be closing statements at the end of that by each candidate.
Thank you, Steve. And I'm John Seaver. I'm the other co-chairman of Citizens for Milford. At this point, I would like to ask both candidates to come up on stage and take stand behind one of the two podiums. Okay. Doesn't matter. Thank you. Okay, so to my left is the Republican Party candidate, Sandra Biagetti. Sandra was born and raised in Milford. She's one of 6 children. She resides in Hopedale with her husband, Bob. She's worked in the insurance industry for 29 years. She's currently serving on the Hopedale Zoning Board of Appeals, and she's been doing that for 16 years. Previously, she spent 5 years on the Hopedale School Committee, and she also was a Hopedale Board of Selectmen for 3 years. Thank you, Sandra. On my right here is Attorney Brian Murray. He also was born and raised in Milford. He lives in Milford with his wife and 3 children, and he's a 1977 graduate of Milford High School. He asked me to tell you that.
Along with your brother.
That's right, along with my brother. And by the way, Sandra is also a graduate of Milford High School, a class of 72. Correct? I got that right? Okay, so we've got 2 Milford High graduates competing.
There you go.
Brian is a graduate of Stonehill College, and he's also an attorney here in Milford. He's a graduate of the New England School of Law. He also served on the Milford School Committee for 12 years, and he served and currently serves as a town Board of Selectmen now for 16 years. And I actually served with Brian for, what was it, 3 years?
3 long years.
So, okay, well, that was a great time. That was a great time. Okay, so the way we're going to proceed here is each candidate will do an opening statement for about 3 minutes, and then we'll open it up to general questions from the audience. I do not have a coin, so does either candidate have any preference going first? Okay, Brian has indicated, Sandra, you can go first, so why don't you begin?
This mic is on, right? I'm not familiar. Right. It's on? Yes. Can everybody hear me? Yes. Okay. Okay, good evening, everyone. My name is Sandra Slattery Biagetti, as you all know. I'd like to start by thanking our organizers, Citizens for Milford, who bring this forum a true sense of bipartisanship and whose only interest is informing the people in the local community. I'm especially encouraged and pleased by the active participation of those in the audience tonight and those who are watching on TV. Throughout this campaign, I've knocked on many doors. Your stories have only confirmed my sense of purpose in representing this community. Let me tell you, when I was campaigning the other day, and it leaves a lump in my throat actually, I came upon the former Luby Avenue Veterans Housing Project, which was my childhood home. And a rush of memories came over me. I had such a wonderful childhood there. I come from a long line of military servicemen, and my dad was no different. He served our country in the Navy, and as a veteran family, we made Luby Ave our home. We didn't have much. In fact, I had a very, very modest upbringing. Living conservatively was a way of life for us and continues to be so. But regardless of our financial situation, we had a close family and lived in a very tight-knit community. Knowing my humble background, I cannot convey to you how fortunate I feel to have this opportunity to run for this seat and potentially represent this fine district. I do not consider this position a natural evolution for me. However, given the ideological imbalance on Beacon Hill, I feel this is the right time. I feel the voters of this district deserve a choice in this election because the fact remains the overwhelming Democrat majority on Beacon Hill prevents true, honest, and balanced debate on matters of importance to the people of this district and the Commonwealth. Given my experience serving Hopedale as former selectwoman and school committee member, and still a current member of the Zoning Board of Appeals, I understand local community needs and I'm prepared to represent this district at the state level. Again, thank you for inviting me to this event, and I look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you very much. Let me also thank Steve and John Seaver, and let me also say it doesn't surprise me that John Seaver didn't have a coin in his pocket. He was like that when we were on the selectmen too. And also to the entire citizens group, not only for this event tonight, but they do so many important things throughout the year. My favorite event is the cleanup day, and I participated the last 2 years with the town administrator, Rick Villani, and we cleaned up Water Street from top to bottom. That was a great event, and I want to commend the citizens for doing that. I'd like to really encourage not only a spring, just give me a look now, I'd like to encourage not only a spring cleanup day, but a fall cleanup day too. It's just great for the community, and it's great that the group does that. Thank you all for being here. As you heard, I have served on the school committee in Milford for 12 years. I'm currently into my 16th year as a member of the Board of Selectmen. When this seat became available, it was something that I had thought about. I think that my experience on the municipal side of things for the number of years that I have been involved in things could be very valuable to the district moving on to the state level. I think the primary focus of this job going forward has got to be constituent service. The residents of this district need to know that when they have a concern an issue with any department of the state, it's not like trying to reach into that black hole and trying to figure out what's going on, where to go. They have a person that they can go to. That person's going to advocate for them, and that person will get back to them with a timely response, hopefully a favorable response, but it's really service to the constituents. Our prior representatives have done that for a number of years. I understand that tradition growing up in Milford. I respect that tradition, and I would look to continue that tradition. Secondly, knowing how important local aid is to all of the towns in the district, really. I mean, maybe not so much in Milford because we have a different financial situation, but certainly Mendon, Hopedale, part of Medway. I think the next representative needs to be a very strong advocate to maintain and increase local aid, and also look to get those numbers out to the municipalities as soon as possible in the budget process. Because sitting on that side of the table, I know how hard it is to formulate your town budget when it's uncertain on the state budget. So again, I thank you for being here, and I would certainly invite whatever questions you may have.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you, both of you. Thank you. That was great. Okay, so at this time, we're going to open it up to general questions from the audience. Please raise your hand if you have a question, and tell your first, state your first name, your full name, and limit your questions to about 30 seconds. Okay. We've got a question right over here.
Since everyone knows how shy I am, I'm Harold Rhodes, for those of you who don't know who I am. Let me just begin by asking a very general question to both, which is, both of you have been very fine citizens within our district. What do you consider to be the 1, 2, or 3 programs, projects, or other activities that you've accomplished on behalf of our community that you are most proud of and would like, the most recognition for as you, let people know about your capabilities to be our next state representative?
Who would you like to answer that?
Why don't we start with Brian?
Okay. Well, Harold, knowing that question came from you, I think I have to give the answer as bringing public bus service to the town of Milford. But really, over the years I've been fortunate to have been involved in so many projects. It's kind of like asking which one of your children is your favorite. Certainly there's a lot of gratification when I see the participation at the senior center. When we have our events, recognizing veterans, even just driving through Milford, it's nice to see how Draper Memorial Park had come out. The youth center is something that I was involved in. The field project. I mean, there have been a number of projects that I've worked on behalf of the town, really outside of the selectman or school committee role. So I think all of those, but something, given the climate of today in the economy, I think probably, I would hope one of the lasting effects that I could have as a selectman is kind of helping to foster that attitude of financial responsibility as a selectman, working with our finance people, our finance committee. And that's one of the main reasons why Milford is in the position it is right now financially. It didn't happen overnight. It happened over a cumulative time of years. And that was something that I advocated for. Paying for projects when we can, not borrowing, not using that credit card, not extending money that we don't have, returning money to the taxpayer. In the 15 years I was on the board, we returned over $15 million to the taxpayer. That set up Milford to be very strong financially for the long term.
Well, as my time on the board with the Hopedale Selectmen and on the school committee, I spearheaded bringing the advanced life support services to the town, which was extremely important based on response time. We used to have to, we had basic life support. Getting the advanced life support and being certified for that meant immediate response to the residents of our town and to the bordering towns. This meant immediate, if someone's having a heart attack, that they would be able to get the drugs they need on the spot. We were also partnered with the Governor's Community Compact, which included the capital improvement planning, and we hired 2 consultants to help with a 5-year financial plan forecast. We received 2 $10,000 grants from the Governor's office. I also assisted in the rezoning the parts of the town for general business use. We were desperate to have some commercial zoning to increase our, to precipitate, new sources of tax revenue. And I'm very happy to say that that continues on to this day, and we will hopefully be rezoning part of Route 140. We negotiated with the railroad to expand use of land and transfer of land to the highway department for the parking of their vehicles and their equipment. We commissioned a solar project pilot agreement and also approved another solar project on Route 140. We became a Purple Heart community as well, which was very, very important to some of our Purple Heart recipients in Hopedale. I worked to maintain a level of services expected by the residents of Hopedale while paying close attention to the cost to provide those services. Oh.
Thank you. Just keep in mind of the timing machine we have. Okay, other questions from the audience? We have a question right here. Sure.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, George, yeah.
Okay, I have a lot of questions, but I didn't want to use up everybody's time and hope that some of the people here would ask the same questions I have. But I want to start off with one question, which I think is general in nature for both of you. What do you think are the top 5 issues facing our communities? And please prioritize them, 1 being the most important and 5 being the least important of the top 5.
Let's start with Sandra.
Well, it's tough to actually say what the top one is, but I really feel in Milford, especially, we need to do something about the cost of illegal immigration. Second, about creating jobs within the community. Third, always, and that even this could be at the top of the list, is local aid. And those are actually the 3 that I'm focused on. If I had to pick, these would be the 3 most important that I'd be working on.
It's a good question. It's a little divergent because really the towns in the district are a little bit different. But if you look at it as a package, clearly local aid has to be number 1. The municipal budgets are so dependent upon local aid. For these towns to deliver proper fire, police, and schools, they need to have strong local aid numbers with certainty. That's something that a strong representation at the state can do. Secondly, kind of feathering into that, I think the commitment to education has got to be there. Our schools are facing increasing pressure from all kinds of different populations. That's requiring different services and resources, and the state has to be able to finance that. Locally in Milford, something actually nationally, I think the opioid epidemic is just something that we really cannot avoid. I think in Milford we've made some great strides in terms of partnering with responsible advocacy counseling services, so that we're looking not for criminalization of these addicts, but rather referrals and help. And Representative Fernandez was very helpful in that in getting us an earmark to start that project, and the town is carrying that forward with a requested town meeting to amplify that kind of work. oh, I got 30 seconds remaining. What number are we on? Let's see. You know, economic development is always a key issue. You've got to bring good industry into your communities. I know that's particularly an issue in Mendon, and one of the problems they have is they don't have the infrastructure. There's no water, there's no sewer. So, you know, maybe the state can step in, maybe the state can render some aid to try to build up that infrastructure, because businesses aren't going to come unless the community infrastructure can support them. So, I mean, you know, though I've got my stop sign here, and I don't want to get yelled at by John, but, you know, I'll be glad to, you know, give you some more ideas, but I think those are really the major focuses.
Other questions, please?
Hi, my name is Rosemary Richards, and I know what Sandra's platform is, but Brian, I'm wondering what your platform is on illegals in Milford. They live much better than any of us. They drive sports cars, expensive cars. The people that are retired, we got a raise of 0.3%. You couldn't even live on that. So what's your platform, illegals in Milford, since you're a selectman?
Well, you know, I've been dealing with the effects of illegal immigration in Milford. Well, that's not entirely accurate. So you've got to understand, first and foremost, illegal immigration is a federal problem. You know, since the Arizona case came down in 2012, it's spelled out. You may not like the answer, but I'm sorry, that's what it is. The Supreme Court has spelled out that you know, immigration is exempted under federal law. So until the federal government can really handle the immigration issue and come up with a comprehensive policy, then all of us at the state and local level are just left to manage the effects. And at the school department, I saw those effects with the increase of what they used to be called the ESL students and now the ELL students. So, you know, we tried to provide our staff with the resources and the training that they needed to integrate those students, because by law we have to educate those kids. Until there's something changed federally, we're responsible to educate those kids. So that puts a tremendous burden on the school system, and that's something that Milford has provided for. You know, at the town level, we've tried to tackle it a few ways. We passed an occupancy bylaw, I think the second community in the state, to restrict the number of people going into apartment houses and clamping down on absentee landlords. If you remember, quite a few years ago, we had lots of problems in different houses with the overcrowding. That new bylaw has stopped that, so we don't have the extent of overcrowding that there was. Is it eliminated altogether? No, but we have a neighborhood task force that goes forward, addresses complaints, and deals with it. If you think back 5 or 10 years ago, it's much better than it was. Milford was the only community in the state to register with the ICE image program, so that we've regulated employment throughout the town. Any company that wants to do business with the town of Milford has to certify the employment status of their employees, their citizen status with the town of Milford, or else they don't do business with us. We encourage local businesses to also participate in the ICE image program. So, you know, it's not as though nothing's been done. A lot has been done. Does that mean something more can't be done? Absolutely. You know, I don't advocate driver's licenses for illegal aliens.
Brian, just wrap it up quickly.
Okay. And I would continue to support that view if I were to be elected at the state.
Good question so far. Please, let's say what's on your mind. Peter.
Yeah, this isn't the question I intended to ask. I'll just like to follow up with the last question. It seems like every week we hear about an accident of an unlicensed driver from Milford. We know the names, we know the streets they come from, we know the element. And I think it's just a matter of time before there's another disaster. So each of you, I'd like to know how you would address that problem specifically.
First of all, what we have to do here is to make this community, or any community as far as illegal immigration goes, less attractive for them to come here. And that means less benefits paid. Right now, they're getting free health care. They are getting benefits. Each child that's born, they get benefits that are paid off of an EBT card. excuse me? Oh. Benefits paid off of EBT cards. They have free attorneys when they have legal issues, and I'm not talking about in the courthouse. As far as the school system goes, we have to provide translation services for them everywhere. It's a requirement in our duty to provide these translation services, but it's the benefits. And a state audit, as far as EBT, the cash option on EBT cards, a state audit in 2013 showed that $87 million of Massachusetts money was spent in Florida and California. Now, there is a requirement, or I should say, it is the clerks or cashiers who, when these people are going through a register, are not allowed to ask to look at the picture ID that's on that card right now, unless that establishment can prove that they ID everyone going through. What we can do to fix this part of it is make it mandatory or required to for that person using that card to show that they are the person who applied and got the benefits. This is a big, big problem with this. They don't have to show, so these cards get distributed. But that's just one of them, and I know I run out of time.
Oh, did you want me to respond to that too, or I don't know how we're doing that? Yeah. Okay. Just to focus on your aspect of the question in terms of motor vehicle operation, I think first of all we continue to enforce no licenses for people here illegally. Secondly, we need to encourage our police department to continue enforcement of the roadways. Thirdly, we have established and continue to establish a relationship with ICE and our Milford Police Department so that anyone who gets arrested by Milford Police, their information is sent off to ICE. Then ICE makes the determination whether or not it's the type of individual that they want to hold or they're simply not interested in. Oftentimes, ICE is not interested in the individual. If they are, the Milford Police Department holds them on detainer until ICE comes in and takes custody. Next, at the court level, we need to work with the district attorney's office to try to get maximum penalties for these people who are convicted or charged with the driving with the illegal licenses. So the enforcement aspect is a big part of it. It occurs to a large degree. It can be encouraged to occur further. Do we need to maybe increase the penalties for folks that allow people to drive their vehicles without license? I mean, I know that was a law that Representative Fernandez worked on, but it's got to be continued enforcement to get these operators off the road.
Next question. Rosemary.
Okay, I'm interested in charter schools. Do you support charter schools? And if you do, why? And if you do not, why? For both of you.
You want me to start with this? Well, if you're referring to question 2, I do not support question 2, which is looking to increase the level of charter schools, I think by 12 every year. Charter schools have become a drain on funding for regular public education schools. When charter schools first originated, the idea was that any student that would leave the public school would be reimbursed. The public school where the student left would be reimbursed by the state so that their budget would remain static. They wouldn't lose any funding. In the last 4 years, that hasn't happened. So some of the towns, I think Ashland is facing a major deficit because so many of their students are going outside of their district to charter schools. It's a real drain on the public education. I do not support raising the cap on charter schools at this time, primarily for that reason, because I suppose it would be revenue neutral if the state continued to reimburse the losing districts. but where that's not going to happen, we can't be forcing these municipal school departments to try to make up those dollars in the town budget. That's just going to mean an increase to taxes to all of us.
You know, I really had to think about this heavily, and I interviewed a few superintendents of schools and accountants in the school districts. And can everybody hear me? Okay. And I really was torn about the yes and the no vote, because the question wasn't whether it was yes or no. My question was, how does a school get to a point that they're so low performing, and what has happened before this? How does it get to that level where everybody's trying to get out? And I just couldn't understand that. And I understand to say yes means it really is a financial, it's financially devastating to a lot of districts. To say no leaves children within a school system that is underperforming. So what do you do? I mean, as a parent, I'd probably want to say yes. But then, as a taxpayer, I want to say, well, you know, why does it get to this level? Why does it get that a school, it's acceptable for a school to be underperforming and everybody wants to run out? I'm really torn with this question, and I really have to research it a lot more, because honestly, I don't have an answer that I'm comfortable with right now.
Okay, other questions? Gentleman over here. Mike?
Thank you. My name is Mike Visconti. I'm a resident here in Milford. I might as well first jump on the bandwagon in thanking Citizens for Milford for organizing this event. I think it's a great opportunity for the residents and the citizens of the district to get firsthand, face-to-face questions answered from the candidates. Thank you. While we're on the subject of illegal immigration, when illegal immigrants are arrested and they go through the court system, there is the option to deport those illegal immigrants. In Massachusetts, we have the lowest percentage of deportation of illegal immigrants that go through the court system. We have the lowest percentage of deportation of any state in the country. Would you support, and do you think it's a good idea, to have a mandatory deportation law for illegal immigrants that are arrested and go through the court system? Thank you.
Okay, you know, first of all, Mike, it's not primarily the responsibility of the state court department to deport. That's got to be done by the federal authority. So the state courts can hold defendants, and I have seen them do this, when ICE wants to come and take custody. It's not up to the district court judge in Milford as to whether or not defendant so-and-so is going to be deported. So, you know, I think in terms of your question, really the best thing that we can do is to continue our process and encourage ICE to look at these illegals closely. I think on the federal side, they're probably going to say, you know, their resources are stretched out, and they look at the most dangerous ones first. To the extent that we would have some sort of say in terms of deportation, I would not advocate deportation unless they serve their criminal sentence for whatever crime they committed here. And, you know, just on this issue here, I mean, I think the big reason is economics, employers hiring these people under the table. And I think if we want to really get to the root of the problem, we've got to continue to come down. We can't support businesses that have illegal employees. When we find businesses that are using illegal employees, they need to be reported, they need to be sanctioned, they need to be prosecuted. I mean, you've got to cut off the revenue wagon at that particular point. If they don't find it beneficially, financially to come here, they won't come here.
As I said earlier, we really need to make this less attractive for them to be here. We can't sit here and do nothing either. We cannot, first of all, I will never say that's not my job. If I've worked in my local agency for 30 years, and not once has anyone heard me say, that's not my job. Even if it wasn't my job, I found out whose job it was. The thing is, at the local level, we're the ones who are suffering with this. We need to go up the line. We need to let the federal level know how bad it is. This is a serious, serious issue. And as far as the employers, it's very difficult to track a legitimate business because they're able to set up their own businesses under their own name and get a tax number, and they're employed. They have people outside who register these vehicles for them and get paid to register these vehicles for them. And they can insure them because they have a legitimate person driving the vehicle. So there's a little underground system going on here, and I have knowledge of that, and that's where it needs to start. If we stop and we don't allow illegal citizens to be able to get a business tax number to run these businesses, we could start there. We could start there and have some points in check and just stop. We need to stop making it so easy for them to be able to do these things. And what they're causing is, they're causing a lot of stress on the businesses that are around here. They don't pay, can I just take another minute to, okay. They're not paying workers' comp insurance. They're not paying payroll taxes. They're not paying unemployment taxes. And people are saying they don't, but they only get paid $12 an hour. Well, guess what? After all of us pay our taxes, the average person, it comes down to about $12 an hour.
Frank, would you like to add anything on that?
No, I mean, all of those issues right now can be reportable. I mean, if there are businesses that are out there that aren't paying taxes, it's a quick call to the Department of Revenue. I mean, all of that needs to be reported, whatever, has been said there. If those kinds of activities are occurring, don't frequent the business, and if you find out about it, report it to the Department of Revenue. All of that kind of stuff needs to stop, no question.
Other questions?
My name is Charles Clark. I live in Milford, and I'm going to get off the subject of immigration and go into transportation. In the next week or so, the state is implementing a new process of travel on the highways where you don't have the toll booths. If you don't have the transponder, you're going to be charged twice the price. I find that to be a little excessive. Also, I have heard that if you work in the Boston area, they're thinking of having the people pay more during their commute to get into Boston, which to me is unfair too, because these people are tied up in traffic. Seems to me that the road should be improved before they start having the people pay more because they're tied up in traffic. I'd like the opinions of both of you on this item.
Believe me, I feel your pain. I don't have a transponder either. The gantries, that's what you're talking about, the gantries. I call them the spy poles. You know, I don't agree with this either. Especially when I read that you're going to have to pay when you're in congested traffic. You're not suffering enough as it is, being stuck in traffic, and you're paying more to do it. I really, really object to this, but and I still haven't run out and got my transponder either. I'm waiting for the day when these are over Route 9, Route 495, and if you drive through Boston, you could possibly have a picture taken of your vehicle going through a yellow light, and you get a ticket in the mail. Something about me says it's an invasion of privacy, and I don't agree with it, and I don't agree with the increased cost, but I guess we're stuck with it.
The larger question beyond the transponder is really how are we going to fund our transportation? So the Mass Pike right now is the only toll road in the state. I think it's good that they're eliminating the toll booths and going to the electronic tolling because presumably that's going to stop congestion. The Department of Transportation had a number of public hearings on this issue, and I went to one of the public hearings. I went to the first one in Worcester, and I looked at the graph, and the proposed tolling structure, while they said it was going to be revenue neutral, that's true overall. But when you broke it down, actually to drive from the New York border to Boston was about $6 cheaper than what it is. The proposal is $6 cheaper than what it is today. And at the same time, exit 11A to Copley is about 5 or 10 cents more. So I went to that public hearing and I voiced my opposition to that. I said, I think your tolling process is unfair to Metro West drivers. And they had a subsequent public hearing in Framingham. I know Senator Spilka went. I know Representative Fernandez went. And from my understanding, the Department of Transportation is amending that toll increase to be more equitable for the central Massachusetts driver. It was terribly unfair. I think the broader question is, why does the central and western Mass driver have to subsidize transportation costs for the entire state? That's not right. You've got the Southeast Expressway, you've got Route 3, you've got the Northeast Expressway. If I'm elected, I would support legislation to put those gantries on those roads. And then you don't have to worry about a gasoline tax. You don't have to worry about a mileage tax. Now you've got transportation expense equitably distributed throughout the state, not just on the central Mass or western Mass driver.
Wonderful presentation, by the way. So, you have a question?
Yeah. For those who don't know me, my name is Michael. I live here in Milford. I am a husband. I am a father. As of this summer, I'm also an unconvicted felon, according to the AG, the Attorney General of the state, because she has redefined what an assault weapon is. I'd like to know, do you support her, or will you join the bipartisan opposition against her? Thank you.
Yeah, you know, I think the Attorney General's action in that regard was, you know, maybe well-intentioned, but I think certainly ill-conceived. And I know Representative Fernandez led a contingent of legislators questioning the Attorney General's action in that regard. And it was a very pointed letter which really asked for the constitutional and statutory authority that she had to interpret the law. Now, interpretation of law, as far as I know, is up to the court system, not the Attorney General. And I believe that matters now going forward to actual litigation. And, I mean, you know, from the perspective of a state representative position, you know, I would certainly be interested to see how that litigation unfolds, what the court system says in terms of the validity of the actions or the illegality of the actions. depending upon what that decision says, that's going to provide the legal guidance for potential legislative framework if, in fact, it is an issue. But I really think that it was not done in the best manner forward. I think when you're trying to interpret laws that have already been implemented and used by a number of individuals, such as yourself, you really can't have that ex post facto situation. At this point, I think it's got to be determined by the courts as to the extent of her authority on that, and then I think the legislature has to act accordingly with the guidance of the courts. But, you know, if there is going to be any kind of legislation on anything like that, you've got to bring in all the interested parties. You can't just talk to one interest group and come up with a set of regulations. You've got to get information from gun owners, from folks that know what these things are and what they aren't, and then try to get everyone's interest together and come up with something that makes sense for everybody.
Thank you, Mike, for that question. In case anyone in this audience doesn't know, I'm licensed to carry for the past 30 years. I've had a very clean record all my life, and I think the Attorney General has certainly overreached and has made those of us who have honored and respected the right to bear arms felons. And if elected, I'll work very, very hard to protect the individual's Second Amendment rights. I took this personally. I do own a few guns, and I think she has definitely overreached, and very few things upset me, and this is probably one of them.
Sandra, over here, this is for you. I'm getting back to the illegals in Milford. You know how this gun thing bothers you? Well, the illegals bother me in Milford. Do you think something could be done starting with the town hall? I mean, I've reported homes. I'm thinking, why aren't they doing it?
I'm sorry, the
Okay. Like your problem, you have a gun. You have the Second Amendment. Okay, and the illegals bother me in Milford.
Okay.
Okay, I've reported homes that I've seen. It's a disgrace. Shouldn't something start from the town hall? What are they doing about it?
Well, you know, I know a lot of employees at the town hall, and they all work very, very hard, and sometimes they're restricted by certain laws. I've reported a few things myself. I don't think porta potties should be allowed in the backyard. And it's very offensive to neighbors. I think, like I said, it really does need to start making it less attractive. And I know you say crack down on the businesses, but the businesses with these illegal immigrants are their own. They have a tax number, and they have maybe like A&G, you know, construction or something, a magnetic sign on the truck. It's very, very difficult to track that down unless you have some of the inside information on that. I have a lot of information and a lot of contacts with this, and I would know where to start if I could get the cooperation from certain people. And I did try to get the Workers' Comp Board to probably track down some of these vans when they're working. The problem is a lot of their jobs could be outside of the state in New Hampshire, and they come back. And a lot of illegals who are in here register their vehicles in New York, where they don't care. And they come into Massachusetts and they live here. So if we could get, you know, a group of people together to actually work on this, you know, something, we could make some great strides in making it, like I said, less attractive to be here. You go where the money is, and this is where it is.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry that you're frustrated with the efforts of the town, and I tried to tell you some of the initiatives that we've taken at the town of Milford, and I know that that doesn't satisfy you, and that's really, you know, all I can tell you. You know, Milford has taken some very creative and unique steps that other communities have not. You know, there's no other occupancy bylaw in the state other than the town of Yarmouth that I know of at the time that we initiated that bylaw. That gives us the right to initiate the legal process, but you know, we can't go in there without permission or a warrant. All of that takes time. You know, the ICE image program, we were the first community in the state to partner with ICE to clamp down on employment of illegals. We have a relationship with ICE and our police department. So we have a neighborhood task force at the town hall, which is spearheaded by our building inspector, and that task force is supposed to investigate complaints that you have. And I'm sorry if it hasn't met your satisfaction, but we get reports on a monthly basis of the properties that they do go to, and whatever issues they find, if it's appropriate to contact the fire department, the police department, the Board of Health, it's a comprehensive task force to try to look at it. There are limitations as to what they can do, but working within the confines of the law, they're making an honest and good faith effort to try to target these things. And if there is overcrowding, I'm sorry you're upset with my response, but you know, that's the activity that's going on at Town Hall. If you have something more specific that has not been addressed, you know, please get it to me.
Other questions? Two more questions.
Hi, I'm Beverly Swimer. I live in the town of Milford. Recently, Citizens for Milford hosted a program on the 40B law. Our town, as you've mentioned several times, has initiated a task force. Housing blight continues in the town and is very obvious to anybody that's driving around. However, even that housing blight doesn't come under the 40B law. The information that we all gained at that forum that we had here not long ago was extremely informative and very discouraging, because at its best, it's a deeply flawed law, and it's been in operation for a very long time. It was considered the anti-snob law, and clearly that has not lived up to its advertisement. The very communities that have difficulty handling what this law wants to put in place are communities like ours that are struggling as we are to keep up with the housing issues that we have. They don't fall under this 40B law, so the housing blight continues. So it isn't just Milford, but of course I'm concerned about Milford. It's all across the state. And if you look at the many communities that are across the state, it's very clearly obvious the communities that have escaped this law. However, whether their leaders in their community have been more proactive and have found a way to move around it, I don't know. But our community doesn't seem to be particularly proactive to find a way to handle this law in the best way for our community. I wonder if you have an answer, and it actually is for both of you, because all communities are being impacted by this law.
I'm not exactly sure what your question is, and of course the affordable housing law, it's different than blighted housings. You know, it's set up for low and moderate income. You know, just a couple of things. I mean, you know, I led the fight 12 years ago to keep a 40B off of Beaver Pond, and we did everything we could to try to limit the development potential of that project, and that meant cutting down the number of bedrooms, cutting down the number of units. That project actually didn't go forward until just recently, and it's being constructed right now. You know, I think the statute 40B, as I'm looking to, you know, try to move up to the state level, the perspective has to change a little bit. And one of the things that always troubled me about the law was that it was this artificial number to determine the level of affordable housing that you had in your community. It is based on a sort of a nonsensical formula. Milford, I think, is at 6%, and if you're under the 10%, then you're subject to a 40B by a developer. The problem with the law is it does not take into account the assessed value of all real estate in your community. And I think if the law did that, Milford would be well over the 10%, because I think we have a housing stock well below, or I should say well within, what the affordable guidelines would be. So if I were to be elected state representative, I would advocate and fight for a change in that law so that it doesn't just determine on the state subsidy formula. That formula is based on what the actual affordable housing is in a community. That would do a great deal to alleviate these projects from communities that already offer the affordable housing and force it off to the communities that don't, which what you said was originally intended in 1969, communities like Dover and Weston and Wellesley. They clearly would not meet the limit where Milford would.
Okay. 40B is disturbing to most, and I think it conjures up some scary images of, as you said, blighted homes. But the thing with 40B, some of these buildings are really very attractive, and they make a new home available to most. But the 40B, I think that you're talking about. My concern with that, it's a very large project, and the utilities, especially water, would be affected, and the traffic. The last thing down in that project that you would really have to deal with would be the traffic. That would just be, I think, traumatic for anybody that lives around there. That lot was meant, and that area was meant for commercial development on a highway. As far as the utility, this is what bothers me, is the utility and the water ban, especially the water ban we had this year. To put in that many residential, over 300 plus residential apartments, would really stress here. And these are things that we would have to pay attention to and actually work to keep this project from coming into Milford.
What's your position? This is Tariff Chambers. What's your position on medical marijuana and specifically the question on the ballot?
I'm on the opioid task force in Hopedale, for those of you that don't know. And the opioids are a controlled substance. I'm not for this, by the way. Opioids are a controlled substance, and we don't have that under control. To introduce another drug, a mind-altering drug, into the system now is more than we can actually handle. I'd like to see this wait a few years until we can actually get a handle on the opioid crisis that we're facing now.
I'm going to be voting no on question 4, but the evidence is pretty clear. Marijuana is not an opioid. The problem, I think, with this ballot question exists on a number of levels. First of all, the question was mainly drafted by the marijuana industry. And if you look at the tax that they're proposing, it's about a third less of what gets taxed in Colorado. So if for nothing else, you can look at that and say, wait a minute, this is not a particularly fair way to implement it. I think beyond that, I think the technology has to catch up with the question in terms of operating a motor vehicle. Right now, if you're drinking alcohol, we have a scientific measurement, the breathalyzer test, that can show whether or not a person is impaired or not. There's no similar technology for marijuana to determine the amount of THC in your system that could have you impaired, or how long that is in your system. I'm told that that's on the way, that will be there, and you can wrap it into the law. So, my perspective on that is until you get that kind of technology so that our police departments will be able to effectively enforce impaired operation through marijuana, we ought not to be doing it. You know, there are other problems with the question. It's supposedly going to eliminate the black market, but at the same time it allows people to grow up to 12 plants. Well, to me that sounds counterproductive. I mean, why would I go out and buy it if I can just grow it in my backyard? So I think the whole problem with that question really leads me to vote no on it.
More questions?
Hi, I'm Bob Weishart from Milford. First off, I'd like to say it's a pleasure to see a man and a woman on a political stage being civil to each other.
Something new and different in this year's electoral process nationally.
Well, and that's kind of where I'm going. I mean, the reason I came here tonight is to try and understand a little bit about each of you and get to know what your thoughts and beliefs are. And then to parlay that forward into the national election, which of the candidates, and I'm not going to ask who you're voting for, but which of the major programs that the current candidates, their approaches, which do you most support? And that's for both of
you. Oh boy, where do you start? You know, I watched some of that debate last night. You know, and it's okay, yeah. I mean, I spoke to some folks that, you know, have seen a lot more than I have, and I don't think there's ever been a presidential race like this. And quite frankly, I think it's disgusting. I certainly don't support Donald Trump. Where do you even start? You know, the statements that he makes, there are times that I think that he's not in control of his faculties. That's okay, I guess, if you're in the entertainment world and that's your cup of tea and you like the shock jock type thing and you're into that. We're talking about the President of the United States, the most important man in the world, person in the world, and making some key decisions that can affect the entire country, the entire world. To me, you've really got to have somebody there that's responsible, that's mature, and that's curious enough to learn what he or she does not know. And that might be the biggest fault that I see in Donald Trump. There doesn't seem to be any desire to try to reach out and gain other information. I think it's a shame because what this is doing is probably turning off a whole generation from civic involvement, and that's truly unfortunate. We as voters are faced with an imperfect decision, and I think looking at it, you've got to go with a candidate who best meets your criteria in terms of handling stressful situations, making correct and just decisions, and I don't have any qualms telling you I will be voting for Hillary Clinton.
Well, I'll tell all of you, I have no qualms in telling you I will not be voting for Hillary Clinton. And that's for personal reasons. You see, my brother served in Iraq, and he served in Kuwait. And my personal reason is because of how Benghazi was handled. I think it's an absolute shame that she didn't offer protection to those men, and they were so brutalized. If that had been a family, I was upset by the whole process as it was. If that had been my family member, I think most people would think differently about this. Because if my brother, he still serves as well, and he may be deployed again. If she did not offer him that protection, honestly, it's just very, very disturbing to me. And as I said, that my decision to not vote for Hillary Clinton is a personal decision and has nothing to do with party affiliation.
Questions?
Yeah, Peter Scandoni. I missed the selectmen's meeting last Monday, but I heard there was a discussion about renewal initiatives involving properties along East Main Street and some other areas along Route 16. So, as our state representative, what could or would you do to meld Milford with this project? It seems like it's a revitalization effort that's pretty much needed in town. Thank you.
I missed that meeting as well. Maybe, Brian, you can explain that to the both of us.
Yeah, I obviously was at that meeting, but Peter, please don't read too much into what happened on that particular aspect. It basically came at the end of the meeting. I think it was some offhand general comments by the chairman, Bill Buckley, looking to try to, I guess, formulate some type of idea to try to deal with, well, it changed. It went from blighted houses to an area in town to potential TIFs. So it really, I think, would fall under the title of meanderings at a committee. There was certainly no position taken by the board. You know, I think the larger question really is, what can the state do to encourage, you know, economic development? I think we need to work with the municipalities when they can target and locate economic zones that they think will benefit business, and whether or not that needs a grant program, a loan program, perhaps infrastructure investment. Then I think the state representative for that district would work with that community to try to assist to get whatever benefits are available to try to develop that economic zone. I mean, you know, we've been successful with that in Milford. We've used the TIF agreements very creatively to have some very good businesses here. And I would look to continue that type of work from the state level, much like Representative Fernandez has done, really be a conduit, a mouthpiece to the state as to what's available to assist us to try to develop some of these economic zones. But the meeting you're talking about, there was nothing, it was just general conversation. It might be the foundation, it might be the starting point for something, but not last night, not the other night. I'm having a flashback now to my selectman debate. Yeah, I mean, you know, that property is on the market, okay? It was offered to the town to purchase at, I think, close to $600,000. The majority of the board, I don't think, wants to pursue that. I certainly wouldn't advocate pursuing it at that price. What I did advocate for is to have our planning and engineering department provide us an additional study, because we did do one a couple of years ago to show exactly what you had mentioned. We could slice off a piece of it and increase the lane of travel and try to alleviate some of the traffic. So I thought before we should reject that offer out of hand, we ought to at least evaluate it on the town level to see what intrinsic value would have to the town just for what you mentioned. Now you would wind up taking the entire lot, but you know, not all of it would be used to alleviate traffic. So, you know, perhaps the rest is some open space, you know, maybe a small park, maybe something like that. But I don't know that there's a majority on the board that wishes to pursue that at this particular time.
I'm not familiar with that. Thank you.
Claire, you've been very patient.
Oh, she's not heard. Oh, you? Do you want me to stand up or sit down?
You're fine the way you are.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. I hope I'm loud enough. I'd like to create I am. I'd like to create something to help the young people graduating from Milford High School or any of the schools, and to help on tuition aid for them when they want to go to a state college or something like that. I just thought perhaps I was thinking of the town of Milford, or well, maybe it would have to be organizations to help out some of the students, to help them to go to a state college that they can't afford, and you know, if it's possible. But a lot of now some of the banks in Milford, they're always donating $1,000, you know, for some event and so forth. That's good though. It's good for them to you know, to give an award to somebody that works for them or something like that. I think that's great. But I was wondering, all these checks that go out, you know, on the organizations, or if we could come up and help some of the students here in Milford on their education, on tuition aid, if it's possible, some way. When I was going to school, I mean, at that time, I was born during the Depression time, and there was no money around and so forth. I mean, there was jobs. I worked for the telephone company and so forth and got ahead there. I took a lot of courses at night for 3 or 4, almost over 3 years. I took night courses on management, and that's what helped me, because I wanted to be a lawyer and so forth. But it was different in those days. But I am very interested in helping the young people get ahead. Do you follow me now? Is there any questions?
Let's have the candidates respond. We'll start with you, Sam.
I couldn't have said it better. If you can get a group arranged, I'm in.
Yeah, I mean, you know, while I was on the school committee, I was very active in trying to encourage, you know, local organizations to contribute scholarships. There was a scholarship in my family's name, my grandmother and grandfather's name, for many years. I think that's very, very important. I think at this particular level, I think voters need to know whether or not their state representative is going to be committed to public education. I certainly would be. I would advocate and fight for dollars for our public colleges. I mean, I talk to so many parents now, and you know, they're kids. They're so proud. They get into schools like BU and you know, Dartmouth, and they can't afford to go. And they go to UMass, which I think is an excellent school system. But you know, that's not inexpensive anymore either. So I would be firmly committed to supporting public education throughout the state if I were to be elected.
So we have time for a couple more questions. So, raise your hand. All right, we've got one over here.
Hi, folks. My name is Ken O'Brien. I'm from Mendon. And is that better? Ken O'Brien from Mendon. Thank you very much, folks. Sitting in the back, I'm reminded, first of all, of the famous quote that Teddy Roosevelt made about the folks in the arena deserve all the attention. I want to thank you two guys for being willing to stand up there and experience the stick being poked at you. So, okay, enough of that. My question has to do with education in all the towns, specifically special education. What are you going to do to help our kids in the district through our public schools to make sure that they are going to receive all of the necessary special education that they deserve, the services?
Okay. Yeah. Okay. We had an excellent special education department in the town of Milford, and by all accounts, it continues to be excellent. I think that it starts with qualified staff, recognizing what resources they need to have. I think it continues with a very supportive administration, realizing the importance of special education, not stigmatizing it, not putting it off to the side as something ancillary. It's part of the entire system. It's part of the entire curriculum. It goes up higher to the school committee to support whatever needs are there. Beyond that, to the town meeting, all at the local level. Now, the local level can't support all of the special education needs, and that's why the state has to come in. So I would certainly support funding for special education as needed. Whether the circuit breaker needs to be increased or not, I think that depends on the kind of communities and what their particular needs are. But really, at this level, I think that the state representative needs to hear the concerns and the needs of the local school systems, whether it's through the administration or school committee, and then be best prepared to address those needs with resources to make it available to the different communities.
Thank you for that question, Ken. That one's near and dear to my heart. I have a beautiful nephew who is autistic, and I think of him often as far as special education goes. I would advocate so strongly for some extra funds for special education. This is so near and dear to my heart. I know the struggles that the parents have when their children are educated to the age of 22, and then there's nothing for them. They go all those years with structure, and then there's nothing after that age. This would be an issue that I would be very willing to visit and make every school system find out what your needs are, and would advocate strongly for so many more funds for this. I've seen the hard work that these special education educators, when I was on the Hopedale School Committee, and these people work so hard, they really do need to have the extra funds. And I would definitely advocate for that. Thank you.
So we have time for one more question, and then we'll go to closing statement.
I'm sorry, I almost have at least a dozen more questions, but I'd like to follow up on some of the aspects of some of the prior questions. I'm particularly interested in one of the comments you made, Brian, that was quite informative of me, that you fought very, very hard to eliminate or put off 40B on Beaver Street. Personally, I don't want to represent everybody in this room, but personally I hope you work just as hard to prevent this development in Milford, at least the size that's proposed. I know for a fact the school system can't handle the population that would bring. Clearly the water company can't handle that, and they've even said that if they did supply the water to that, there'd be no more development anywhere on 495, which would be tax advantageous for Milford. And certainly the highway department and the road situation can't handle that. So personally, I would hope you become aggressively involved, and that the town selectmen do not be benign on this issue. But going forward, Milford can't handle a project that size, from my own opinion. The other question I have is on ELL funding. I asked, as some of the school committee members were exiting the meeting, exactly how ELL funding, since it was raised as part of the tax at a prior town meeting, we wanted to know what part of the budget was for English learner education. And one of the questions that I came up with after the fact was, I didn't quite understand, not only is the funding, the state has a role in funding ELL, which I guess they do, but there's a tremendous lag in how they do fund it. So a year later, you might get money you would do a year before. Is that true? And if so, as a state legislator, maybe you can do something about that. And then the other thing is, the last part is illegal.
You're cut off at 2, George. That's it.
Put the other one in writing.
All right, do you want me to do it?
Yeah, let's start with Brian.
Yeah. All right, let me see if I can kind of figure that out a little bit. First of all, you need to understand that the primary jurisdiction at the town level is the zoning board. for Chapter 40B. So my understanding on this particular project right now is the developer is working with the local town professionals, town engineer, health department, to try to, a sewer department, to try to address a lot of the concerns that popped up in the initial proposal. You know, the initial proposal could look vastly different than what ultimately gets built, as is the case up at Beaver Pond, or it might never get built, as the prior one that was submitted in that area in 2008. So the zoning board, not the Board of Selectmen, is the primary board that makes the decision on those particular aspects. I would certainly be involved at that project. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely, absolutely. And what I was going to say, George, if you, you know, I would certainly look to be involved in that project, depending upon what level I'm at. If I remain on the Board of Selectmen, I would be active in that project. And if I'm fortunate enough to be elected to this position, I would be involved in that project to the extent that the local officials would request, because this position is a little bit different than being on the Board of Selectmen. I'm sorry, I think I lost track of what your second one was. Oh, the ELL funding. I'm not privy to the school department budget. It's been about 16 years since I was on, you know, the school committee. I think the funding mechanism has changed. You know, that year lag is not uncommon on a lot of different mechanisms. I mean, that's the way FEMA grants come in. But, you know, certainly I understand the importance of that funding to the school department, and I would do everything I could possible to try to accelerate that funding.
I'm not privy, as Brian said, I'm not privy, I'm sorry. I'm not privy to the exchange in that meeting that you're talking about, so I would be more than happy to do some research for you and have you just contact me. I'll give you my phone number after the meeting, and I'd be more than happy to look into that for you.
Thank you all for asking the questions. We're now going to move to the closing statements from each candidate, and we'll ask Sandra to begin first.
Okay, to hold this thing. How did you get the good one?
It's not that good. It keeps slipping out of the holder. I got to talk to Rob about that.
Bob, Brian, it's from the senior center.
Oh. Where's Villani? We need to increase that budget.
Okay. Once again, I want to thank the citizens of Milford for organizing this event. We've covered a lot of topics this evening, but I'd like to summarize why I wish to serve as your state representative. I've listened to the concerns of the voters across the district and of those in the audience. Those concerns have renewed my resolve to work hard for what matters to you, the voters. I heard you when you said you pay enough in state taxes, when you said that government like you should not spend more than it takes in. I do not support the Democrat leadership's consideration of a tax increase to pay for our recent budget shortfall. Instead, I will support Governor Baker's economic plan and his efforts to control spending. I will work to eliminate cash benefits on EBT cards, taxpayer money that's been used in many cases for the purchase of alcohol, tobacco, lottery tickets, and other illicit uses. Massachusetts spends over $400 million a year on this program. $300 million of that is taken out in cash benefits. With limited restrictions on these cards, there's no way to monitor the way this money is spent. I heard you when you shared your concerns about the cost of illegal immigration on our communities. We cannot let roadblocks by the federal government prevent us from enacting common sense policies within the state government's control. Uneven enforcement of our laws place an unfair burden on those who follow the rules. Instead of offering sanctuary to those who do not play by the rules, we must honor and reward those who have invested in the promise of America. I heard you when you voiced your concerns about the opioid crisis. As a member of the Opioid Task Force in Hopedale, I understand the complexity of this devastating issue. It's not just a drug problem. It's not just a pain problem. In many instances, it's a mental health problem. The destructive impact of this issue on both family and community has renewed my resolve to make this a priority for me on Beacon Hill. I heard you when you voiced your concerns about local aid for public schools and towns. I will work with Governor Baker to assure that our local communities' needs are met and that our schools are safe and sufficiently funded. We must remove wasteful spending if we are to have funds available for essential local services. I do not keep a resume of my accomplishments. You may not find my name in the headlines. You will, however, find me working behind the scenes, tirelessly for you and for all of us. As Harry Truman once said, it's amazing what you can accomplish if you do not care who gets the credit. Before we end tonight, I'd like to say that I was recently referred to as a foot soldier in the Milford Daily News. At first, I was taken aback by that comment. Did you know the definition is a soldier who fights on foot? Then I thought about that. What a compliment for me to be compared to the many members of my family who serve this country, especially my Uncle Bobby, who's missing in action and thought to be captured during the Korean conflict. And and my brother Jimmy, who served in Iraq and Kuwait. I'm so proud. Tonight, I humbly ask for your vote, November 8th. Please remember this. I am not a foot soldier for the Republican Party. I will be your foot soldier on Beacon Hill. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And again, let me thank the citizens for Milford for organizing this event, and for all of you for coming here and participating with such great questions. And let me commend Mrs. Biagetti for her time in the race and the effort that she's put forth. It's not easy. I understand that. This has been a very disheartening political season nationally as we see what's going on. I only hope that it doesn't discourage public service. And I think the only way that we can overcome this type of attitude that's at the national level is to improve our community. We've got to control what we can control. If each of us can improve our area, if we can do a little bit to make our community better, that's going to grow like a flower and flourish like a garden, and that's how we beat this negativity that's out there. I've spent my entire life and my entire career improving this community. And when I talked about foot soldiers, I wasn't necessarily referring to Mrs. Biagetti, but 57% of her contributions have come from people outside of this community. I'm interested in this community. If I'm elected as your state representative, I'm going to be your advocate, not only for Milford, Mendon, Hopedale, and Medway. And make no mistake about it, this position is imperative. It's the voice that we have between the local government, the local residents, the local taxpayers, and the state government. We need someone competent, we need someone intelligent, we need someone willing to fight. I think I've done all of those things throughout my career, and I would continue to do that for all of you if I am elected. So thank you for your participation. I appreciate it, and I ask for your vote.
And one final word, and this is to you, all you who have participated here tonight. Please give yourself a big hand. This is what we're all about, and we hope, we really appreciate the turnout and especially the participation. Good night, all.